Hi, this is Phil Nevin with the San Francisco Giants. You're listening to Out of Left Field with the Grilling Truth.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Out of Left Field. Graham and Chris back here with you. Chris is back from his trip to Haiti. Man, how was it? Good show without you. We went over some stuff, a lot of signings that kind of worked into our discussion of the AL Central, but glad you're back. We've got plenty to talk about. Tell us at least a little bit about your trip. I know there's some stuff you're still trying to, I think, kind of just wrap your mind around, but tell us a little bit about what you did and what it was like.
So we got to Haiti on Sunday afternoon, Sunday morning, really. And we went immediately from Port-au-Prince, which is the capital city of Haiti, to Gonaïves, which is another very large, I think, second largest city in the country. About 300,000-ish people live in Gonaïves. And it's about 4 hours north. So we drove to Gonaïves, and then we went to the house of the person we were staying at, whose name is Pastor Ganata. And it's him that we were staying with while we were going out to Jubilee School. We went out to Jubilee that day, and I've still not sort of recovered from just, the level of poverty and what seems like it would be a difficult place to have any sort of positivity. But believe it or not, you get there and you look at it and you say to yourself, this is a landfill. This isn't a city. This is where the city comes and dumps their trash, and it is. That's what Jubilee is. It's a landfill, but people live there. You see these kids come running out, and some of them don't have any clothes on, and they're running out to see you, screaming "blanc, blanc, blanc," which means white, white, white. And so we get out and we walked through Jubilee, and it wasn't until later in my trip that I realized that somebody said, "Do you feel bad when you see these kids and they come out and they're running around and they're naked?" And it wasn't until later in my trip that I realized, you don't have to feel bad for them. It's not like the kids don't have clothes. Many of them do. What we came to understand was that, the clothes that they have are for school. So when they're playing, they don't want to get their school clothes dirty. So that's their play clothes. They just,
and granted, to be fair and to be thankful, you didn't walk out there and play with no clothes on. That's when I would have actually felt bad. I mean, abject poverty is horrific, but just the thought of you joining in, that would have made it that much worse.
Well, thanks for that creepy thought, Graham. I'm glad you could interject that into my reflection. No, it was a very eye-opening.
I'm just helping you level things out a little bit. That's all. I'm just providing perspective.
It was an eye-opening experience. One that I will not soon forget. One that I hope inspires me to do a little bit more to help people there. It's not just places like Jubilee. 80+% of Haitians live in poverty, and when I say poverty, I mean that they survive on what is equivalent to about $1,700 per year. So, that's a very small amount of money.
Now, I will ask you the one question, and I am, of course, not making light of it, but we do like to have some humor and some enjoyment on the show. And I also ask this because, well, I legitimately could see it as being an actual thing. Did you share Hamilton with the youngins in Haiti?
I wanted to, man. I didn't really have an opportunity.
So, again, folks, you see why my question is not totally meritless here. It is filled with merit with Chris Furry.
Well, Hamilton is from St. Kitts, which is another island in the Caribbean that has gone through some rough times with hurricanes and earthquakes and things like that. But obviously nowhere near the level of poverty in St. Kitts that there is in Haiti, but it's there was once, and slavery was also a big thing there. One of the things you have to understand about slavery, about Haiti, is that this is a country that freed itself from slavery. I mean, Haitians are people who were slaves who, not like the United States or the American Revolution, where these are free, rich men who rid themselves of a king. These are slaves who rid themselves of masters. Much more difficult and trying sort of war that they fought, especially the fact that Haiti is the same island as the Dominican Republic. I mean,
right. Yeah.
They share an island.
Right.
And, Haiti, like I said, 80+% of Haiti lives in poverty, and the Dominican Republic, that's just not the case. I mean, there are areas of abject poverty in the Dominican Republic, but there are also very nice, wealthy pockets of people living in the DR. So it's just weird to see that line, literal line in the case of Haiti and the Dominican Republic. There's a literal line between the two sides of the island. So
really,
it was an eye-opening experience, and I enjoyed it, and I hope that it helps me to be more thoughtful and more appreciative of the privileges that I'm offered in life.
That's awesome. That is it's an awesome experience. Glad you got to go on that and enjoy. And
I got to feed orphans, and that's always fun.
That is that's well, I'm not. Yeah, I mean, fun or rewarding, I guess, definitely. But
right.
Definitely some good stuff that you guys have to do.
You'll appreciate this. We had a moment. We were pulling boxes of cases of food that we send to the one of the organizations one of the people that went with me, Christy, her organization sends cases of food. It's Kids Against Hunger. They send these cases of food to orphanages and schools and stuff in Haiti. And we were unloading a tractor trailer full of these boxes of food. We were in a big fire line, handing these boxes of food down. And I looked at one of the guys and I was like, doing this with boxes of food instead of boxes of 50 cal is a whole lot more rewarding.
Yes, I can definitely imagine. And guys, if you want to get involved there, please go to kidsagainsthunger.org. So as seamlessly as we can transition into baseball, let's put the ball in play. So glad to have you guys along with us here on Out of Left Field, brought to you by the Grueling Truth Network, broadcast all over the place on iTunes, on iTunes, on iHeartRadio, of course, the Grueling Truth app in the Apple App Store as well. You can find it and always on thegruelingtruth.net. Be sure to check out our social media pages, Out of Left Field with Chris and Graham on Facebook, and at OO Left Field on Twitter. So the American League MVP last year, the ALCS MVP last year, one and the same, Jose Altuve. He has inked a new deal with the World Series champion Houston Astros. He was on a massively team-friendly deal, and I think true to what we're seeing from this ball club. They are taking the guys who are important to this club, who have made significant impact with this club, and are rewarding them as such. I mean, you think about this. We come into this year. He's been in the league since 2012. He's earned a career total of just under $13 million. Think about. I mean, let that. And I know we're not trying to laugh.
And he was on a
$13 million, but I mean, when you think about this big picture,
he was on a really friendly deal for this year too, wasn't he?
Yes.
Was he making six figures or something like that?
It was. I think it was $6.5 million this year and $6 million or $6.5 million next year. which I mean for his production is amazing. So the Astros and his representation got together, and there is now a $151 million going to be in Jose Altuve's bank account in the next 6 years. 21 million of that coming in the form of a signing bonus. He gets 1 million once the contract is approved, 10 million later this year, and 10 million as well in 2019. I'm not even going to ask you, man, what you think of the deal, because I know that you love it. But let's just break it down.
Yeah.
I mean, it had to happen, and better now than later.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Just piss him off. We've already seen, the fact that Chris Bryant. We haven't heard the rumblings since he really has been in the big leagues and had his MVP year. But in the back of your mind, you have to still remember what the Cubbies did to him. The Astros have come a long way in the last 4 seasons and are treating those young players that are at the heart of that team with the respect that they have earned and they deserve.
Yeah, and I think it's hugely important. Jose Altuve is the kind of guy who I think you want him on your ball club, especially if you're the Houston Astros. He's a good clubhouse guy. He's just a lot of fun to watch. You know what I mean? It's fun to watch Jose Altuve play baseball because you can tell that he's just having the time of his life while he's doing it. And other guys on the Astros, other guys in the league see that, and that makes them have a better time. And I think he really brings sort of an air of levity into that clubhouse, which I think is something that they really need. But let's be honest about this deal. What I really love about this deal is that at 5 years and $150 million, this is still pretty club friendly. I mean, this is still pretty friendly to the Astros. They're not getting raped over for big money like we've seen, other guys' big money contracts have kind of hurt their club a little bit. But, I mean, it's not chump change. And I think that's what we were all worried was going to happen, that they were going to talk extension and be like, well, let's extend for a couple of years and then we'll talk big money. They didn't do that. So this contract's going to begin at the end of his current deal, which means that the 5 years actually starts in 2020, which give them control over Altuve through 2024, at which point he'll be 34. And I think that 34 is a good age for them to start looking at shorter term contracts with Jose Altuve.
He's already like 5'8". How much shorter do you want him to go, man? What the heck? Like, leave the short guy alone.
Shorter term contracts, I think, with Jose Altuve. Once he hits that 34, that age of 34, it'll be interesting to see if they just keep him on the 2, maybe 3 year kind of extension deals or probably still big money deals. I'm sure he's still going to be an impact player at that time, but it'll be interesting to see what they do. I think this is a good move for both parties.
Yeah, and I mean, it is relatively team friendly. I think team friendly more so. I think more so in the length of the deal. It's still an average annual value over $30 million. I mean that's a lot of money. But we've seen him do really the same thing the last 2 years. So it's gone from being a fluke or a flash in the pan to being consistent. He's backed it up, and we're not seeing a reason why it's going to stop. He is, a lot of times, how much do we talk about, the guys that are kind of shorter at times kind of are the heartbeat of a team because they play with that chip, they play with that fire. And Altuve is no joke. I remember hearing a story, a couple of years ago, and I think he got tossed by, I think it was Alan Porter. And if I recall, the pitch was a pretty good pitch, and not much reason to bark. But they had lost, I think, 3 or 4 straight. The Astros were on a skid. They were really starting to find their groove and their niche, and starting to kind of make a little bit of waves. And I mean, he blew a gasket. I remember hearing guys say, "Well, we talked to him earlier this week, and he said I'm probably going to get ejected here in the next couple of days. I mean, he knew it was that time. It's just one of those. There's a place where it kind of fits, and obviously he has, he has done very well at kind of being able to grab onto the heartbeat of that team. They're doing everything right. You get Altuve, lined up. You got Springer lined up. You're ready for Correa when the time comes. You can kind of figure out what you're going to do with your pitching. I'm sure there's going to be free agent arms. You've got still some really good arms, albeit a little bit older, but they're still there and they're still pitching fantastic. So, if
I just like to
West, don't be too excited.
If you're not the Astros,
exactly.
I just like to put Altuve, because you said that, and you're right, $30 million a year is a lot of money. It's a lot of money. But I'd like to put his MVP season into perspective real quick. Just going to give you a couple of stats here. He was number 1 in the American League in hits, multi-hit games, led the majors in games with at least 3 hits, first in the American League in infield hits, tied for second in runs, third in on-base percentage, stolen bases, OPS, fifth in total bases, seventh in slugging, and tied for ninth in doubles. All of that stats, top 10 stats for one player. He was a top 10 hitter in almost every single category. So, I mean, yeah, that's a lot of money, but you can't say that with play like that he's not giving you a big return on your investment.
Yeah, I think that makes the most sense. Real quick before we move on here, I want to take a minute, and I know we didn't discuss this, but it just kind of flashed in my mind. We cover every bit of baseball we can on this show. We'll talk a little bit of Little League, very, very rare, but it'll happen. Minor league ball, college ball especially. Augie Garrido, he was the longtime Texas Longhorns coach, the winningest coach in college baseball history, at least for this year. Florida State's Mike Martin is now 17 wins away from the record, so it will be broken soon. But when you're 25 victories shy of 2,000 for your career, and he has 952 losses and 9 ties, not too bad. Something Augie said once in 2005: baseball isn't rocket science. 9 is the highest number you deal with. Was an old school coach. Knew the game, had a ton of major league players that played for him. Guys, Chris, I know names that you're going to know, some that you're fans of, some that you'll just remember. But guys like Brandon Belt, Phil Nevin, Houston Street, and that's just Corey Nebel, Mark Kotze, just to name a few. So our thoughts and prayers out to his family after complications from a stroke. Passed away in California at the age of 79 3 days ago, March 15th, in Newport Beach, California. Augie Garrido, a Hall of Fame coach, great coach in college baseball, and left himself quite a mark, I think, on the game.
So, Augie Garrido, I actually have an Augie Garrido story, believe it or not.
Oh, Lord, here we go.
Augie Garrido is from Vallejo, which is about an hour south of where I'm from. It's in the very, very very northern tip of the Bay Area. And, he went to UC Fresno, and when he went to coach the Longhorns, I knew who he was. And Augie Garrido being
Fullerton should have been right about. I mean, Fullerton's kind of rise in the college baseball world should have been right at the time you were kind of coming up, with Bay Area sports.
Yeah, Cal State Fullerton was directly in my my coming up period. 2000 is when I really started talking to people from universities, and the fact that California, a Bay Area guy, Augie Garrido, who I knew from his work in Cal State Fullerton, was coaching the Longhorns, was a big reason that I was considering the Longhorns as an option for college ball for me. I ended up only getting a partial scholarship from them, about 50%. But had I gotten a full ride, I would have seriously considered them along with Cal Berkeley. But yeah, so that's my Augie Garrido story. I actually got a letter saying that I had been offered a partial scholarship from Texas to play baseball for his program I would have been heading there in his 5th year as head coach of that program.
And 2002, I believe, was one of 2 of his national championship years as head coach of the Longhorns. So, again, our condolences to his family and everybody in the Longhorns family and anybody that's had a chance to be touched by him. A very long-tenured, well-respected coach who certainly, I think, as I've told people, I think the mark you can make by someone that's a Hall of Famer is did they leave the game better than it was when they arrived. And I think you could safely say that Augie Garrido left the game better than it was when he arrived. Back to Major League Baseball news. Jake Arrieta finally has a home. The Philadelphia Phillies. I didn't stutter. The Philadelphia Phillies have announced they have officially inked Arrieta to a 3-year, $75 million deal. Still a pretty good size chunk of change for him. He gets $30 million this year, $25 next year, and $20 the year after. So slowly goes down in price, which is helpful. And he can choose to opt out after 2019. Here's an interesting one, though, man, and I don't know if you knew this. The contract allows the Phillies to void the opt-out by picking up a 2-year option that extends him through the 2021-22 seasons. So I guess if he makes that big of an impact, they can just say, no, you're sticking here in Philly. Man, I know we talked about the Phillies probably still being the second worst team in the division behind the Marlins, but man, they are committed, to kind of pulling, I think, an Astros, Indians, Cubs thing. I mean, we think about where those 3 teams I just mentioned were in the last 3 or 4 years. Before Francona got there, the Indians were a joke. Before Madden got there and this young talent came up and Theo went to Chicago, man, Chicago was just running through managers and nothing was happening. Houston, we've seen the story. We've seen how it's transpired here, and 2 of those 3 teams have pennants and banners hung up in their ballparks. I'm not saying that this Arrieta signing for Philly is going to be the catalyst that puts them over. I don't think that. They're still several pieces away, but when you get a Carlos Martinez, I think from Cleveland, and
right.
That's a big deal. I'm sorry, I think it was Carlos Lee. I apologize, Carlos Lee, who's now with the, but I mean, that's a big thing.
No, I agree. I think this is a huge deal for them, and this is not something that we expected to see from.
And for the record, it's 10 o'clock my time. It's Carlos Santana. 3rd time's a charm, but I'm brain dead. I just want to go ahead and put it out there that after all the Carloses, it's Carlos Santana who now plays for the Phillies. Shut up. Just carry on. Just carry on.
So I don't think this is it's something that we expected from the Phillies, especially since this is a lot of money to pay a guy who now you're kind of putting all your eggs in his basket, hoping that he's going to be the guy that gives your club a kick in the backside to get him back up to where, the Phillies have been in the past. Maybe not the best team in that division, but certainly up among the best teams in that division. So when I first read this, I was like, oh man, that's weird of the Phillies to do, but it's not really. I mean, we're talking about a team that's used to having big names like Jake Arrieta, right? I mean, the Cliff Lees and the,
Yeah, well, they were the mid 2000s big three with Hamels, Halladay, and Lee. Remember Schilling,
right,
who was there, of course, Worth and Utley. Ryan Howard, all these guys. It was a monster roster.
Right. So when you think about it in that context, this isn't shocking, but I think that if they're going to pay 27 million or 29 million this year, and then
30,
progressively less as the years go by,
and 20.
Yeah. So if you're going to pay that much money to Jake Arrieta over the next 3 years, $75 million, then you need to also commit to putting tools around him that are going to put your team in a position to do well, because you can't just hire Jake Arrieta and say, all right, bring us up out of the basement, because that's just not how baseball works. One guy once every 5 days just isn't gonna do it.
Now, I want to ask you this because, we've discussed, the way that compensation works when qualifying offers become, an issue, I guess, within signings. The Phillies are parting with a decent number of picks and money here. With the Carlos Santana signing, they lost their second highest draft pick in this year's draft and $500,000 in international bonus pool money. With this signing of Arrieta, they surrender their third highest selection, which is the number 79 pick, and another $500,000 for his services. So $1 million in international signing money, and then you're looking at two big picks, their second highest, and then their number 79 overall. That's granted, I understand that, draft picks are never a guaranteed thing, and first rounders are usually your best bet. But that's a pretty decent sized price to pay. I guess what kind of makes me curious here is, it seems like the Phillies are banking more on the fact that they have the pieces already in place growing in their farm system, and the need to go out and try and find talent and hope that you win the crapshoot and it's someone that blossoms might not be what's going to put them in contention the fastest, which to me I think is kind of a new way to look at free agency and the way to run a ball club and get it into a contender. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
Well, we can see from the way some of these teams have been sort of doing the same thing that the teams have always done, sort of rebuilding in the same way, or tearing down and starting over in the way teams have done for the last 100 years, on a rotation, 10 or so years, is really not paying the sort of fruits or the sort of dividends that we've seen in the past. And so now we've lately seen a lot of teams get away with those kind of, what's a nice way to put it? I don't know, like a light rebuilding or a restructuring, maybe even a remodel of the team. And that's been paying off pretty well. And I think I like that shift from the old school tear it down and put it back together from scratch to, hey, why don't we go into free agency, see what kind of guys we can find for the picks that we have, or the draft opportunities that we're going to have later. Why don't we get those draft opportunities and send them out to other clubs and see if we can put together a team that's going to do something now, and maybe we can get some of that stuff back later to rebuild our farm system. Now, the Phillies have sort of a weak farm system as farm systems go, but they're doing this in much the same way that a team like the Padres has been doing it. It hasn't been really paying dividends for the Padres either, except that the Padres have been picking up guys in free agency, picking up guys at the trade deadline, using those draft picks, and they still now, this season, boast one of the strongest farm systems in Major League Baseball. So who knows if that's something that's, if they're playing the short game and the long game at the same time. And if the Phillies are capable of doing that, then I think that's an excellent way to go about it.
So, and we'll detour here for a quick second. And I mentioned this last week when Tim Farmer was co-hosting with me. Of course, you can find that show and all of our shows on our social media sites, Out of Left Field with Chris and Graham. That's our Facebook page, and at OO Left Field on Twitter. I know all of you out there have your bracket probably sitting in the fireplace, just burning up because, UMBC and everybody else. It's just been a crazy March. But make sure to check out for your Final Four predictions, everything else with the National Championship, thegruelingtruth.net and at Grueling Truth on Twitter and Facebook. I want to ask you this.
Am I the only one that thinks UMBC sounds like a utilities company and not a university?
Yeah, sort of, kind of. I feel like it's the university.
Or a bank?
I feel like it's a university for the chemical guys to go to in the Army. So I asked him this because there was a slew of signings last week. But I guess you had Carlos Gonzalez, a 1-year, $8 million deal with the Rockies. Moose gets a $6.5 million deal to remain with the Royals. Carlos Gomez got that 1 year, I think, $4 million deal with the Rays. And then you got the 1-year deal with the Athletics for Jonathan Lucroy. I know that we have talked a ton about free agency, and I know we don't have a ton of time. I know you're not going to go long on this, but I'm curious what your take is on these kind of veteran names, these players, especially in Moustakas, with that kind of production. Carlos Gonzalez, he struggled last year. I think he's playing for his career life right now. But Moose was on top of the world last year, and we were seeing a slew of 1-year deals. We've talked about how we saw the face of free agency beginning to change. Is this a perpetual continuation of that? Or is this just hey, we're near the end of spring training. Let's just get you in here, have one more time, and then we'll just see what happens with you next year?
Well, Moustakas, I think, is the most perplexing of these 1-year deals, right? Lucroy, look, I like the guy, but he hasn't exactly been setting the world on fire.
I think Lucroy is trade bait for the A's. I still think it's a trade bait signing because it's team friendly. You can get something back for him come the deadline if you're not competitive, which you're unlikely to be. To me, that makes the most sense for asset garnering later on in the year. Right.
And Moustakas did have a good season last season. He hit 270, 272, on base at 314. That's a little low, but his slugging percentage was high at 521. He's knocking the crap out of the ball. He had 38 home runs.
Boatload of dingers, man.
But when you take that and then you look at what he has done over the course of his career, he's only cracked 20 home runs one other time. He's a career 250 hitter. He doesn't get on base very well, right? He's a career 305 on base.
You're hedging here. And I'm starting to think that I'm going to get an answer that I didn't expect from you.
I think you're about to. I think that what happened, because on the surface you're right, this is a perplexing thing that he got a 1-year deal, but the fact is I think that they looked at Mike Moustakas and said, well, he had a good year last year, but that's really a career year for him. Is that something he's going to be able to repeat at 29 years old? Is he going to improve upon those numbers? Most importantly, is he going to be able to get on base at better than a 315 clip? Because a 315 on base, well, that doesn't buy the groceries, man. 272 batting average and a 315 on base just doesn't buy the groceries in Major League Baseball right now. I think they took a long look at what he does year to year to year and said that we don't want this guy long term unless he can show us in this 1 year that we're going to give him, that we're going to offer him, that he's on an upward trend. Because having a career year at 29 or 28 and that career year still being a replacement level performance on paper, I mean, it looks good. It was flashy. He had a good year. I like watching him hit 38 home runs, but come on, man. He only hit 272. Let's not forget he only played in 148 games, which is only one less game than he's ever played. The most he's ever played is 149 games.
Right.
So,
but both his All-Star years in 15 and 17, I mean, are right about that point, 148, 147. I mean, obviously he was more into the power kick this year because the home runs went up, but so did the strikeouts. And I mean, 16 had he stayed healthy without the knee injury would have obviously been, I think, another good year for him.
Well, look at 15 and look at 17, and the thing is he has in common are those are the 2 years that he broke 20 home runs. And flashy with a bat in 15, flashy with a bat in 17. 15 was his career high batting average at 284. I mean, this is never a guy who was going to finish top 10 in MVP voting. So you can't look at 38 home runs and say, yeah, well, he's worth $200 million, because he's not. And he's not worth 6 or 7 years either, because he's going to be 30 here real quick. And I think the Kansas City Royals sat down and said, well, we have to really be realistic about what we're going to offer Mike Moustakas, because this is the kind of guy who could take a precipitous drop at the age of 32 or 33. And if we're wrapped up in Mike Moustakas for 6 years and 160, 175 million, it's going to hurt us as a ball club.
Here is the last one that I will ask you. It's a guy who played majority of first, but I know you played your corner. You know, you're a little bit of the hot corner, and you have a pretty good feel for infielders. As a third baseman, okay, throughout his career, he's played all but 17 of his games at third. He DH'd 17 of those. He has a 960 fielding percentage, 87 errors in his career over the course of about 7 seasons or 8 seasons. I'm just curious, or no, I'm sorry, it is 7 seasons. I'm just curious what your take is as a third baseman on a 960. I mean, I know that's one of the ones where you expect a bit of a lower number, but 960 to me is a little bit lower than what I would expect from a guy who, you know, I mean, you want him for his bat, but you need to make sure that hot corner is protected.
Well, it is low. And it's a lot lower than you want to see from someone in such an important position. I think that, man, I didn't know it was that low. But to be fair, it's not any lower than guys. Put it like this: it's not lower than a guy that I think you and I could agree is one of the best defensive third basemen in baseball, based solely on his ability to move about the field or to cover that corner effectively, and that's Manny Machado.
Yeah.
Manny Machado's career fielding percentage at third base is .957. So, yeah, it's a place where you expect more errors, because the more right-handed hitters you have, the more opportunities you're going to get at third base. And, you know, that ball comes at you quick.
Chipper Jones
side of the box.
Chipper Jones was 954. So I mean, again, I'm not basing what happened with his contract off of that. I just wanted more your take. Sliding back.
It sounds really low.
It does, but again, there's always that caveat of the position, and I know, and that's why I just wanted.
I'll point this out. I'll point this out though, that in a single season less time, Manny Machado has committed 20 fewer errors in his career at third base.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So there is a bit of a concern there for the number of errors he's committed, but some of those are going to be throwing errors, and you don't include that in fielding percentage.
Let's move on quickly over to the National League East. Quite an inauspicious end to his free agency period. Jeremy Hellickson gets a minor league deal with the Nationals. A good chance probably to be the fifth guy in that rotation, but a guy who left out of Philadelphia, I think, was expected to get at least a kind of mid-level deal as a starter, comes out now and definitely is not going to be getting what he expected. Last year, not great for him. 8-11. Had a 12-10 year in 2016, a 12-10 year in 2013. Aside from that, he's been under 500. So I understand that kind of an inauspicious start. Last couple of years for him. He's a 500 pitcher in his 8 seasons going. I'm just surprised that a minor league deal was where he ended up with the number of teams that need at least some sort of arm. But hey, he seems happy about it. He'll be 31. Scott Boras, I believe, is his representation, and said that they were one of the first guys to call, and he seemed happy about that. And hey, if he's good with it and it's something that that he's ready to roll with, then good for him. It puts the Nationals in a good spot at the back end of that rotation. And if he can kind of come through and pitch the way he did in Tampa Bay early in his career, the Nationals should be looking to finally get their chance, deep into an LCS or hopefully to a World Series.
Well, inauspicious is a very nice way of saying disappointing.
I try to be nice.
If I'm Jeremy Hellickson, I'm disappointed right now in where free agency got me. I expected more from him. I think you expected more from him. But again, looking back and really taking a solid look at what he's done and not saying, oh well, let's just base it on the one thing. I think that this is really where he needs to be. It's an eye-opener probably for him, but he's probably going to end up at the back end of that rotation, which, in my opinion, is going to be good for the Nationals. I think it's going to be good for the Nationals to have him holding down that number 5 slot. It's going to give them an opportunity to... No, I think it will be good for him. I think that sometimes you need that motivation, right?
Yeah.
And that's definitely a motivation. That's definitely a motivator.
A little adversity in your life?
Right.
Well, I understand that point, but I'm going to go that I think a little adversity in your life kind of always has a caveat on it.
Right.
Because guys I'm just grabbing names out of thin air here. Jorge Polanco. I'm just grabbing him. Just for, okay, I'm grabbing him because he got an 80-game suspension for steroids.
That's more than a little adversity in your life. And let's not forget that there's a difference between a little adversity in your life and causing problems for yourself that are going to negatively impact your career. And that's what Jorge Polanco's done at this point. I mean...
Why you got to be all nitpicky, man? You got to be all nitpicky and negative.
Here's what I don't get. And I said this to you when we were talking about this earlier. I don't understand the getting caught and then continuing to deny it thing.
I'm going to go ahead.
Barry Bonds did this, right? I don't know what they were giving me. Pretty much everybody. Yeah, please do.
Give me a second to. So, Polanco issued a statement saying that he, quote, regretfully accepted the suspension, but, quote, did not intentionally consume the steroid. Quote, the substance that I requested from my athletic trainer in the Dominican Republic and consented to take was a combination of vitamin B12 and an iron supplement, something that is not unusual or illegal for professional athletes to take. Unfortunately, what I was given was not that supplement, and I take full responsibility for what is in my body. Unquote. Polanco also added he'd like to fight the punishment, but he'll avoid doing that in the best interest of the Twins organization. The Twins issuing their own response saying, quote, we were disappointed to learn of the suspension of Jorge Polanco for violating Major League Baseball's Joint Drug Prevention and Treatment Program. We fully support Major League Baseball's policy and its efforts to eliminate performance-enhancing substances from our game. Per the protocol outlined in the Joint Drug Program, the Minnesota Twins will not comment further on this matter, end quote. So once you finish wiping off your shoes from the pile of fecal matter we just went ahead and dragged you through, look, man, just take your licks, move on, come back. No one's talking about Starling Marte this year. You know, by next year it'll be forgotten. I mean, it is what it is, okay? You hit 256 last year with 13 home runs in 133 games. You're not a power guy. It's okay.
Yeah.
You don't have to be.
And guess what? Nobody cares. Get on base. Steal bases. Do the things that you're good at. Excel at what you're. Well, he's not good at that either.
His on base was 313, and he slugged 410.
But try to do the things that you're supposed to be good at. And you know, maybe baseball's not one of those things, but still, you should. Oh, sorry, that was me.
Rude, man.
I just don't understand this immediate move to deny it. Everybody knows that you took performance-enhancing drugs. You know that you took performance-enhancing drugs. Stop taking the Barry Bonds line and saying, well, my trainer did it. I had no knowledge of it. It was my trainer. My trainer was giving me the cream, and the cream had the drugs, and the drugs were in my body, and I don't...
Hey,
shut up.
At least he didn't say he made out with some girl and ingested the steroid that way. Which was a legitimate... That was a legitimate reasoning given by a tennis player who I believe that he ingested cocaine that way, and his suspension was actually overturned.
Well, but for cocaine, it's plausible.
Yeah, no. Hey, she could be...
Especially if you're snorting cocaine and...
Hey, she could be...
Especially if you're snorting cocaine and making out with some girl.
She could be into the horse tranquilizers, bro. That's all I'm saying. Moving on, let's go ahead and wrap this up, man. We are getting kind of long in the tooth here, so we are going to go ahead and get to you. We are two
What's
left.
Your drug of choice? What?
We are into the National League West, Chris's favorite division, only because the Giants are there, and by Giants, I do actually mean, the worst team in baseball last year, paired up with the Tigers. I just wanted to throw that out there. Excuse me. 64.
One of those two teams will be a 500 team this year, and one the other one.
I agree. The Tigers have a good chance. So let's go ahead and take a look. We will leave the Giants and Dodgers for last, just because I know Chris is salivating to get to those guys. Padres, we'll start off there. A team that has made some moves. I'm not sure why you're still sounding like a horse over there. The joke has made it's run its course. Eric Hosmer, obviously the biggest signing. Will Myers goes to the outfield. Man, I'm not sitting here going, this is just awesome. I don't care. I mean, Chase Headley's back with the ball club. At the end of the day, they don't have enough right now to really impress me. I still feel like the Harper signing. I mean, we beat that to a pulp. There's just not enough there to make them competitive. Sure, maybe their farm system's up and coming, but right now, they made a big splash.
At the end of the day, the San Diego Padres aren't going to bust 70 wins. I'll be surprised if they win 65 games.
Yeah, I mean, they were at 71 games last year. I don't think Hosmer puts them up that much further. With the Giants being a stronger team this year, I do believe I'll agree with you. I'll go under 70 wins for the Friars. To Mile High, the Rockies, man, there's still a lot of solid stuff with that ball club. Arrieta comes over to catch from Diamondbacks. Didn't have a great year, but it was an okay year, and you'll see how much more he can kind of fit in there as far as it goes in Mile High. I love the fact that they were able to go ahead and snag Wade Davis. Really was surprised that the Cubbies didn't want to hold on to him. It still was a great steal for them. We'll see how well LeMahieu, Trevor Story did not have the same sophomore year as his freshman year was. Arenado, Desmond, Gonzalez. Cargo, I told you this, man. I think, to me, Carlos Gonzalez is playing for his career. He's a 32-year-old player, which I know is young in life, but he played 136 games last year, hit 262, on base of 339, slugged 423, only 14 dingers, 57 driven in, and that's a huge drop from 16 and 15, where he was sitting right about the century mark in RBI and had 40 homers in 15, 25, and 16. We're seeing kind of that precipitous drop. This is his year. If he can make something happen, he's got probably 3 or 4 years left. If not, it's going to be minor league deals until he's just drummed out of the big leagues, I think.
Yeah, I agree. But like you said, there is a lot of good in Colorado right now. And I think that Colorado is probably going to be the team that pulls safely into second place in this division next year.
Really?
Yeah.
You think the Rockies will finish number 2?
Yeah, I think the Diamondbacks and the Rockies are going to slug it out again for 2 and 3, but I think they're going to be separated by a game or two, and I think it'll be the Rockies that are plus 1 or 2 over the Diamondbacks. And realistically, and I hate to say this because it heaps even more pressure on the guy, but I'm sure he has no idea who I am, so he doesn't care. But really, that's JD Martinez.
I have an idea of who you are, and I don't care.
It's JD Martinez. JD Martinez is going to be the guy who could have put the Diamondbacks ahead of the Colorado Rockies in this division, in my opinion, with the strength of his bat. They lost that bat, and that bat did wonders for them last year. And so I think Diamondbacks are probably going to have 87, 88 wins. Look to see the Rockies at 90, 89, 90. Firmly in number 2 in this division. And I think look at guys like Charlie Blackmon and Nolan Arenado to be heavily considered in the MVP race next year.
I hear you there, man. I still have some questions about that Rockies rotation. Obviously, Chatwood is gone, so Gray pretty much takes over that number 1 spot. 26 years old, not saying he can't do it. Hasn't had a great spring so far. Of course, that doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot. But last year, guy was 10-4. So I mean, he has the stuff to be a solid pitcher. We'll see how well he can hold on to hold on to it with that ball club.
Well, he wasn't a bad pitcher in the eighth spot for the Oakland Athletics in his stint there. So it's not like it's not like he's never been in the number one slot.
Right, and I mean, I guess like I said, my thing is there. I don't know. That was kind of the big I think question mark for me with that ball club.
Zach Greinke is the ace on the Diamondbacks in the Diamondbacks rotation, and he is a question mark every single time he steps on the mound. Absolutely every time.
Right, and I mean,
Robbie Ray is probably the best pitcher on that team.
Well, now let me remind you, because I want to clear something up, and I'm not calling you out, but I want to make sure that we're on the same page here. John Gray is not Sonny Gray. Sonny Gray was the A's guy who's now with the Yankees. John Gray is the right. Young 26-year-old with the Rockies. I think, and that's more my question. I know we've kind of been back and forth talking about.
I got my Grays crossed up.
Hey, I went through two Carloses before I hit the right one. I got no room to talk, so I'm just saying. It will be close. I still think the Diamondbacks. To me, Greinke and Ray are kind of the edge there. If Greinke pitches well, you never really know. I mean, Greinke always for me.
I'll tell you what.
That wild card. Still.
I'll tell you what. The one thing that could be a difference maker, and with the Diamondbacks, to be honest with you, that might be the difference in them picking up those couple of games that JD Martinez could have won with his bat, is the fact that Archie Bradley, who is by far the best relief pitcher on that team, is finally moving into the closer role now that Fernando Rodney has unceremoniously fled to the Twins. Archie Bradley was a liability on that team. Absolutely no doubt about it. Archie Bradley was a liability on that team. And I know you remember the game that we went to when he came out and I said Fernando Rodney is going to blow this game.
It was game two.
Yep. I said Fernando Rodney.
And he damn near did.
He's going to come out here and he's going to blow this game. And what did he give up, 4 runs?
I think so, yeah. It was the bad strikeout that ended the game on Zogs. I remember that.
Right.
So
that's horrible strikeout on Zobrist.
I mean, there's always something good when a guy with a majestic beard and a red beard at that is your closer. I mean, that has to set you up for success, right?
Absolutely.
Moving towards
that could be the thing that flip flops those two at 2 or 3.
The facial hair.
I don't want to. Well, I don't want to give either team the number 2 slot, but in my opinion, I think the Rockies have the better offensive ball club, and I think that might give them the edge.
So then I do find it surprising that with the additions of McCutchen and Longoria, Bumgarner back looked like a freaking boss today. You got Brandon Crawford, Panic, still 2 of the best in the middle. You managed to go ahead and move on from Matt Moore. Ty Bloch, probably going to be your number 4 guy now. We'll see what Samardzija is. Pence moves over to the left corner. I'm very surprised that you didn't think the Giants would be able to make a push for second.
No, listen, it's not 2013, okay? Andrew McCutchen and Evan Longoria are not in their primes. These are not guys that are going to.
Longoria is not far removed. The guy still is having, solid. 20 homer year last year and 36 the year before. He is still in the prime of his power.
Well, he's in the twilight of his power. 16 home run difference in a single season is enough to tell you that Evan Longoria
But granted, 36
is feeling his
career
age a bit.
high. 36
Right.
is his career high. He's normally a
And don't get me wrong.
20s
Don't get me
guy.
wrong. Don't get me wrong. Evan Longoria is probably going to hit 20 dingers, 20-plus dingers this year, too, probably 25. McCutcheon's probably going to hit 20, 25. But 50 home runs does not a number 2 team in the National League West, the best division in baseball, in my opinion, make. It does, however, take the Giants from a team who won 68 games to a team who I think is going to win 84 games.
I think the Giants could finish third in that division.
I don't think so.
I think either the Diamondbacks
Not playing the Dodgers 16 times or whatever it is.
but so do the Cubs.
The Dodgers are going to win 100
So do
games
the-
this year.
But the Rockies and Diamondbacks do the same thing, and to me, I still see some bigger glaring holes for those two teams. We saw youth begin to be a little bit of a factor for the Rockies coming down the stretch last year. Granted, the wild card game was fantastic. I still think that you can make a fair case that sure, maybe the Diamondbacks, even without Martinez, can have a chance to go ahead and finish 2. But I think the Giants have enough experience there, and you have, the president now stepping back into that GM role. I think the Rockies might find themselves down in the lower half of that division with the Giants sitting there at number 3.
I mean, I would love to see that. I would love for that to be the case. I really would. Right now, I'm trying to remain realistic. It's going to be difficult for a team to come back from a season in which they won only 68 games and come back and take the number 3 slot in a very, very strong division. But Madison Bumgarner is healthy. He's probably going to win 18 games this year. Evan Longoria and Andrew McCutchen might not be in their prime, but they're strong, strong additions to that team. Johnny Cueto is probably going to be a 15-game winner. The problem is, where do you go from there? Ty Block.
I still think Block has a pretty good chance to go ahead and I think he'll be. I mean, if the offense does what it's supposed to do behind him, I don't think it's too much to say that Block could be a 15 or 20 game winner. I mean, we've seen what he can do, and we've seen younger guys be able to do stuff like that. I don't think it's. I don't think that's too far out of the realm.
I don't think that. I think that Ty Block has it in him to be a 20-game winner, but I don't think that we can say that a kid who's about to pitch his first full season in Major League Baseball is going to be a 20-game winner right out of the gate. I think that's a little overly optimistic. I think that we could probably say that he's going to win 14 games next year. If you can get 14 or 15 out of Samardzija, that's great. But Madison Bumgarner, again, is going to be the guy who sets the tone for this team. And unless, all the indications from this spring are good in that his velocity is back where it was pre-accident. In fact, even a little bit higher. I think he hit 94 a couple of times today. His movement is there. He's hitting his spots well. He knocked in another dinger today. I mean, Mad Bum is back where Mad Bum needs to be, in my opinion. That's what I've seen. He's in regular season form already.
Awesome.
6 innings
Right.
pitched today. Yeah, 6 full today. 6 full innings pitched today with 5 Ks. Only walked 2. Only gave up 1 hit. I think that that Madison Bumgarner's doing all the things that Madison Bumgarner needs to do to be the ace of this team again. But I can't look at that team and say that they've made all the moves that they needed to make them contenders again. So as much as I would like to say, yeah, no, I think that you're absolutely right. They're going to be in third place. I still got to put them in fourth place, but only by a few games. Only by a few games. I'm talking 84, 85 wins.
Well, I just want to go ahead and mark the date and time in the show's log because Chris is, after almost 2 years of this damn show, decided to finally be bleeping realistic. Good job. Let's move on.
You want to hear my hot take?
Hot take. Dodgers are going to win the division.
No, that's not a hot take. That's a given. The Dodgers are going to win 100 games again this year.
Yeah.
I think probably 102. I think 102 is a safe bet for the Dodgers this year.
I want to. Now I don't remember the time, and I could be wrong, where there have been 2 100-game winners in the same division. It's a lot harder this year now because of the way that divisional play happens. I don't think the Yankees have the pieces. Bats are great, but could we see the possibility of the Dodgers, the Indians, the Nationals, the Red Sox, and long shot could we have 4 or 5 100-win teams in 2018?
Well, how many did we have last year? We had the Astros, the Dodgers, and the Indians, right?
3.
So 3. Can we get 2 more is what you're asking me. Oh, man. That team the Red Sox has put together over there in Boston is a nightmare for the rest of that division. Now, that being said, they're going to play those Yankees, who are going to be a potent team, to test that lineup, to test that rotation several times next year.
Yeah, it's 18 or 20 times, maybe a couple more, I think.
Yeah, 18 or 20 times. So, assuming that they can split with the Yankees next year, yeah, I think they could do it.
Wow. Just, that's some fun food for thought.
My question is, can the Indians do it?
I think so.
I think the Indians are a 95-win team without Santana and some of the other guys that they've lost this year.
And I think that's what Tim said last year. So he had him right between 95 and 100. I put him right near there. I do think, without Jay Bruce, without Santana, it does change you a little bit. But I mean, still, that's a team you got to think that barely scratched 100 games, and that's with Kluber missing a month. Kluber's almost a guaranteed win factory. So I mean, that'll obviously help too if he stays healthy. Yes, we can break down the Dodgers, but why?
Yeah, the Dodgers are going to win the division, and it's because they have an absolutely rock-solid team.
They're going to be fine.
Top to bottom.
Yeah.
I think the weakest link on that team is still better than most of the players in Major League Baseball. Well, no, that's not true because they do have what's his name out there in right field.
Puig.
Puig, yeah. Yasiel Puig. But I do want to say one quick thing, and I know this is shameless plug, and I'm not gonna take up too much of the show's time with this, but you did throw this out sort of at the beginning of the show that if people wanted to get involved in some of the amazing things that we were doing down in Haiti, that they could look on kidsagainsthunger.org, KH.org. But kidsagainsthunger.org is not the organization; they're the parent organization. That's the national organization. Okay. If you want to get directly involved with what we were doing as an organization, it's actually Manzanita Outreach, which is the Kids Against Hunger Verde Valley. They're the only satellite operation for Kids Against Hunger in Arizona. Again, it's manzanitaoutreach.org, MANZIN.
We'll go ahead and put it on our social media accounts, okay?
Thank you. MANZANITIA. I can spell, I swear I can. I can really spell. I'm an English teacher. I'm just not good at it today. It's MANZANITA outreach.org. Please go on there.
And
if you're
Chris
moved,
and Graham at Out of Left Field.
if you're moved to help, please do. And we love to hear the stories and get the involvement of as many people as possible.
Definitely. Guys, thanks so much for hanging out with us. Next week is the American League West. You're never going to guess who we have going to be on the top of that division. I feel like our breakdowns have pretty much made our entire preseason predictions worthless now, because either we're going to sound dumb because we forgot what we said originally, or we're just going to be like, oh yeah, we've already heard that before. But either way, next week we go through the American League West, and then is it 11 days? What?
10 days.
Yeah, we are just away. The 29th, a Thursday, is opening day for many ball clubs. I'm hoping to go see the Rays and the Red Sox play and watch that potent offense. God, it's so close. It's so close. It's 9 days and a wake up.
The 29th. Unfortunately, I will not be attending opening day this year as I did last year.
Yeah, you have a job thing.
I will be, the 29th of this month, I will be delivering a presentation on the paper that I wrote to the Popular Culture Association of America National Conference in Indianapolis, Indiana. So that's what I'll be doing. I won't be watching baseball.
Awesome. If I need to catch a couple of Z's, I will be sure to call you and ask you to leave your phone on while you give that speech.
Awesome. Thank you for your undying support, you complete jerk.
Always here, man. It's coming from the big red pumper.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Again, thank you so much for hanging out with us, for amusing us and letting us hopefully amuse you guys just a little bit. Take care of each other. Enjoy your week. Last week of spring training, teams are heading back up to their home ballparks. Go ahead and get the last couple of games in, and then we will officially put the ball in play on the brand new season. Looking forward to having a special guest on next week. Retired umpire Dale Scott will join us on the show. Look forward to that. Look forward to seeing you guys back with us next week. Be sure to check out the Grueling Truth Network, all our social media pages. We'll see you next week. Graham and Chris signing off here on Out of Left Field.